Welcome, everyone. We're still here at Layer 8. This is our second interview. Not that that matters to you, because anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and introduce Joe Gray, blogger, trainer, and social engineer, and no stranger to the show. Joe, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
One of the things we talked about when Joe's like, we should talk about social engineering. I'm like, that's good because we're at a social engineering conference. It seems appropriate. However, I don't think we spend enough time talking about ways to defend against social engineering.
That's absolutely correct.
And Joe's first response was, well, first you have to do the offensive side. And I agree, but why?
We have to condition the users into being skeptical because people by default, the whole reason social engineering works is because people trust people. People
Yes.
want to be helpful. So as an organization, people need to run social engineering simulations at varying levels. I rank it on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being the absolute worst, written in crayon, you know it's fake, all the way up to 10 being what we would consider take a drink nation state. You need to do it at varying levels of difficulty to make people skeptical of what they're receiving and make them sit and take a moment and be like, I don't think this is legit. I should do some more analysis on this, or ask someone who knows more about it than me. And once people get the realization that not everyone is their friend and that the
Right.
data is
Like,
coming.
people are going to lie to you. That's what you have to understand is that, and I think just in our human nature, people are like, well, why would they lie about that, right? And how many times have you explained something to your family and or friends and or maybe co-workers or people who work for your organization, and you describe an attack, and they're like, well, why would someone do that, right? Like, why would someone be so mean? I don't know
I
what the social stigma is or the sociology behind it, but
I've had that argument with my mom so many times.
oh yeah.
It took me years to get her to stop posting pictures of me to her Facebook because she didn't use good access controls. And it eventually took me, every time she would pull a camera out to take a picture at like a family get together, I would just have to stick a middle finger in front of my face because she wouldn't post that.
Right.
So finally, I was like, listen, Mom, this is what's going on. People are doing this. And then obviously, right now, given the polarizing political climate and all the stuff with Russia, that's actually a good stepping stone to use to be like, hey, you're not specifically a target, but you're in a group that is a target because
Right.
you're of this political affiliation. So you could be seeing ads. And I explain to my friends and family, it's not just emails. Sometimes it's ads. In my class yesterday, I taught about using malicious QR codes in posters. So, like, for example,
And is really defense really surrounded is really just education and training?
education and training, there are some technical things that can be done too. So SPF, we know that's kind of a joke. That's in their policy framework. It works out really well for the people doing OSINT because it gives away a lot of information. But then also, you've got DKIM, domain keys identified mail,
Yep.
which is a little bit better but still
And
breakable.
that's to prevent email phishing too, but also on the physical side, there are what are the devices called that prevent tailgating? Those are actually pretty effective.
The man traps.
Yeah, I ran in. Well, it was they were like pathways you had to walk through.
Oh.
And they would detect tailgating, and they would detect if you tried to jump over them and sound an alarm.
I've not seen those.
I ran into that on a physical pen test once, and I was like, wow, those are actually really good.
Right. And like, for example, it's not necessarily directly related, but like in my wallet right now, my driver's license and all my credit cards are covered in RFID shields.
Yep.
Just because, I don't trust people.
Now, cameras too, surveillance cameras, I think, are a huge part of it.
Oh,
Obviously, there's
absolutely.
a privacy balance we have to strike. And I think it was Larry was telling me earlier, like, oh, can't you just like look on your camera? I'm like, well, I don't have remotely accessible cameras that look inside my home, So there's, and for a business, it would be a similar thing.
Well-
I think we were talking about a scenario with like the bathroom, like you can't put cameras in the bathroom. And so I'm like, when police officers have body cams, like, do they have to turn them off when they go to the bathroom? Do they take them off? How do they
I've-
remember to turn them back on? Because I have that problem with the mic, right? If we're remote miking, you want to make sure you turn
Right.
it. Yeah. So yeah.
I haven't even thought about the police camera thing. But, with cameras, I want to bring up a big thing with that. I mean, it's just like the rest of the InfoSec industry. You have the cameras, they're monitoring great. Who's sitting to analyze it? Who's
Right.
watching it?
Yeah.
So, I
it's
mean,
usually for historical record in that
historical
in that case,
record and occasionally deterrence.
Yeah. Right.
But
Yes, sure.
and another room similar to the bathroom, something I was talking about yesterday, a good pretext to get in somewhere is to hide, say, a Wi-Fi pineapple in the bottom of a breast pump container and just have the tubes hanging out. And a woman can come in and say, hey, I need to pump.
Right.
And you can't monitor that because it's invading their
Sure.
privacy. So there's a lot of things with that. Training and awareness is the big thing. You've got your technical controls from the phone perspective, because vishing, obviously the SECTF that I'm no stranger to. Vishing is a big problem with that. The best advice I have for someone with that is, hey, if you get a call that sounds a little fishy, or should I say vishy, I always say, hey, I'm sorry, my boss just walked in. I've got to have this meeting with him. He just scheduled it like 5 minutes ago. Let me call you back.
I think that one of the most important parts of awareness about social engineering issues is a similar experience that I just had, like where someone was coming to my house saying they were from the U.S. Census or the Department of Health, or there was even two different people that came to the door. Is just doing the research anytime a situation arises like that. And so my wife has very obviously been a lot of awareness training. She's been married to me for
Right.
almost 13 years now, right? So she was very skeptical. But what I did is I did some of the research and said, well, if it was legitimate, can I validate that legitimate process via the U.S. Census website?
Right.
And they actually do give you a way to plug in the person's name and verify that that person's an employee if you do want to participate in the survey. And they also say that we will send people out to your home, right? I also went to research, like, do they actually send people out to the home, right? So coaching people on that level of validity, because one person that came to the home wouldn't give my wife her name. I'm like, if that person comes back and says they're from the U.S. Census and won't give the name, according to their website, that shouldn't happen. You call the police immediately, right?
Furthermore, that's a felony because they're impersonating an agent of the federal
Exactly,
government.
exactly. So I guess the point of that story would be always validate the situation that's happening, right?
Right.
And coach people to say if someone contacts you, whether the phone or email or in person. I mean, I've always defaulted to I validate it. If someone calls me up
Absolutely.
and says, "Hey, I'm from your credit card company," I'm like, yeah, that's nice. See you later. I'll call my credit card from the number on the back of my card from my own
Exactly.
phone. Right.
Exactly.
So I think teaching people to be that awareness of validation is good.
For the longest, I got spoofed calls from Capital One. I didn't even have a Capital One account.
Yeah.
And me being me, I played with them for a while
Sure.
with my fake card numbers. But I mean, it's probably one of the biggest concerns. And when we look at the older generation, the ones who are already retired or are about to retire, they have their nest egg, they have a lot of money saved up.
Yes.
And in the era of fake news, a lot of them believe a lot of what they're seeing, and they don't have a reason to not trust people and not validate stuff.
Well, they also don't use a lot of online accounts either, which I think is helping today. But slowly, that convenience and the newer generations get older, they will have online accounts. And what I've been coaching people who do have investment and retirement accounts in my family is like basically use some type of two-factor authentication. Even if it's if it is SMS, make sure you've got a passcode that you have to give to make changes to your cell phone account that does not include any digits from your social security number.
Correct.
So this actually just happened to my mom. And like I went through these series of questions. She was kind of confused why I was asking them. I said, well, if your social security number gets compromised and the last four digits of your social are your passcode to your cell phone, and your cell phone is the two-factor for your financial account that has, let's say it's got millions, I don't know how much my mom, millions of dollars, right? That could be enough money where an attacker is going to go through those motions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if the financial incentive is high enough,
Yeah.
there's enough OSINT out there on anybody, unless you explicitly opt out. And even then, there's stuff you can't make go away.
Right.
It's totally plausible for
So
that.
two-factor authentication, I think, is also really good in this context as well, as through social engineering, they could gain your password or be able to change your password or have enough information about you that they've gotten online to change your account information or passwords. But if you've got that two-factor, I think that's really important. And,
Absolutely.
again, even if it's your phone, that's better than nothing. But the physical token, I hesitate because of the inconvenience.
Oh,
factor
absolutely.
For most
I mean,
people. Yeah.
I've admittedly, since I've moved over to a Mac, my YubiKey is,
Yeah.
I use a YubiKey to log in, and it's sometimes obnoxious because I just lock my screen and then I come back like a day later and it's like, hey, you have to put in your password again.
Right.
Cool. But then I have to unplug everything to be able to get my finger to fit around the YubiKey.
Yeah.
It's an additional step, but I see the value in it.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at like SMS or apps like Duo or something, I mean, is it a perfect solution? No, because someone who knows what they're doing and is persistent enough could easily vish that out of someone.
Right.
But it's an additional layer of difficulty, and people who are doing this are not, for the most part, aren't targeting a specific person. They're targeting targets of opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, it goes back to the philosophy of how to not get eaten by the bear.
Mm-hmm.
Be the second slowest person on the group.
Right.
So-
Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.